Hi, my name is Albert Moote, an original owner of this magnificent piece of machinery known as a International Harvester Travelall model B120 4x4, and it was a custom model, fully equipped with anything and everything that was available at the time. Well, of course, my generation was greatly fascinated by the opportunities and potentials of four-wheel drive vehicles, and I think it started in high school when we were going through World War II. Everybody wanted to own a Jeep, and it wasn't until after the war ended and a lot of them came back as surplus vehicles that some of my friends had acquired Jeeps, and we worked on them together to pound out the dents and get rid of the bullet holes and whatever. And our primary use for them was to get into the back country for better access to more effective hunting areas. I bought myself an M37 weapons carrier, which was the military version of the Dodge Power Wagon pickup truck of the era. And I preferred it because we could carry all the camping gear and a lot of guys and use it for a lot of things that you could not use a Jeep for. The disadvantage, however, being that the Jeeps could get into places I couldn't, either because of width, weight, or wheelbase. So when my first wife and I agreed that we would try and find a vehicle that was four-wheel drive, but more along the mainstream lines, like a Mercury Woody or something like that, I began to go out and look around to see what was available. And it was very hard to find this sort of machine. Even where I grew up in the Los Angeles area, they were virtually unknown except in the industrial trades. The Dodges, the Dodge, a variation of this, as well as the General Motors types, were extremely Spartan and were not all that comfortable or well appointed inside. And it wasn't until I came to an international agency in Long Beach, California, that I drove by on a fairly regular basis that I went in there, and they actually had brochures in their racks touting the Travelalls for family use. I laid out the original purchase order in July of 1959. I was 28 years old at the time. I took delivery in November 11th, 1959. By then I'd turned 29 years of age. And in all those years, and in all the trips and travels that I've taken in it, it has been such a satisfactory, reliable vehicle that I never ever saw any reason to get rid of it. And if it wasn't because of my age, I suppose, and the fact that it's gotten to a point where it's very difficult for me to maintain it, I really wouldn't part with it. I love this machine. I've never owned anything that I like better as a vehicle for general transportation or otherwise. And I swear, there is nothing on the market today, terrain and backcountry that this thing has been in, that the Forest Service will no longer allow you to go there. I once drove it up to a place called Halfway House on the side of Mount Shasta. I'd probably get arrested if I drove it up there again today. So the time has come, I knew it would eventually, when it's time to say goodbye to the old girl after I pass her off to the next owner. It goes without saying that I'm going to miss it, but you come to a point in your life when you just can't deal with some things anymore.
Well, here we go again. Another camping trip to the high Sierras. And as you can see, I'm getting the old kludge all loaded up and ready to go. Filling the water bags and laying in the supplies. Neil and I are taking about a 4 or 5 day trip to the Sierras. We're going to do a little camping and fishing and maybe a little hunting. And we're supposed to meet a friend of Neil's up there when we get there. The date is Friday, July the 8th, and we'll be gone much through till the 15th, and this is 1960 again. That old beauty hasn't looked that good in a few years, but she still runs as good as ever. I was living there in Torrance. The address there was 26322 Delos Drive, as I recall, up above the airport there. I was headed north on the highway here to pick up Neil in Lancaster because he was living out there at the time.
Across the bay from the town of Morro Bay in Central California is a very long sandbar that separates the bay from the ocean. To get to the ocean, one must drive over the sandbar on one of these many access roads, over the top of the bar, and down to the sea. This is the first point where we separated the two-wheel drives from the four-wheel drives. This sand was always very soft and fluffy and was guaranteed to bog down even the most inexperienced drivers. There it is, folks, the Pacific Ocean. It would appear that I'm headed for the water, but not to worry. I usually avoided it scrupulously because I didn't like the idea of getting that salt water on the underside of my rig, which of course would have caused an undue amount of rust and corrosion. We're headed north on the sandbar here. You can see Morro Bay Rock off in the distance there. For years and years, folks used to come here to hunt waterfowl, or fish in the surf, or drive on the dunes for fun and recreation. Then the state of California got hold of this strip of land and brought all driving on the dunes to a screeching halt. Fortunately for me, I had my Travelall long before that unfortunate circumstance had come to pass. For many years, I went there to drive and explore the nearly 5-mile length of that sandbar. It was also a much quicker way to get to some of my favorite duck and goose blinds. With my camera mounted inside the Travelall, it's a bit difficult to appreciate just how steep some of these dunes were, or to experience the absolute thrill of racing up one side of a dune only to plunge almost uncontrollably down the other side. Four-wheel drive was essential to getting around on the dunes, except when it had been raining. Then only two-wheel drive was necessary because the wet sand, more often than not, was as hard as pavement. Then, too, I usually deflated my tires down to about 10 or 15 pounds per square inch for better traction and flotation. Needless to say, I always carried a gas engine-driven air compressor so I could get my tires up to highway pressure very quickly when I got off the dunes. That's Morro Bay off there in the distance. This was a lot of fun, and a lot of other people enjoyed doing it as well as I did. I'm glad to have these few minutes of film to share with those folks who unfortunately have been deprived of such an enjoyable experience, one which we may never see again. This segment shows a unique way that the Travelall was used on a construction project in the early 1960s.
Starting about July of 1962, and for several months to follow, the loading and hauling away of unwanted earth from the main auditorium area became one of the work crew's main jobs. Now, loading the dirt into the trailer was one thing. Dumping it was another. We didn't trouble ourselves to shovel it out the same way we shoveled it in. These clever Americans can always find a way to do it just a little bit faster. By chaining the trailer to the truck and counterweighting it, it would easily tip up and, like a dump bed or a dump truck, would drop the load in a matter of seconds. The smaller trailers, however, were handled in an entirely different manner. We just simply dropped the tailgate and then backed the whole thing right over the embankment. I am often asked why we didn't do that with the large trailer. Well, given the size of it and the weight of the dirt inside, it occurred to the operator that trailer, dirt, truck and all might just end up at the bottom of that embankment in the sea. And besides, it was a lot easier to pull these little guys up over the embankment than it would have been with the larger trailer. In this sequence, you will see how a heavy beam for supporting the ceiling over the stage was installed. Using the winch system on a four-wheel drive truck and a pulley rigged to one of the large dome timbers, a very heavy laminated beam was easily hoisted into place. That's the beam there that you see running across the center of the stage just below the roof line.
Alrighty then. That pretty much wraps it up as far as a lot of my old home movies of this old Travelall, which I've enjoyed for the last 50 years. But one more thing. One more thing that I have to show you before we go. Check this out. As you probably know, the spare tire and wheel on one of these things can weigh up to 150 pounds, which makes it very, very difficult to get it out from underneath this thing or put it back after you're done with it, right? Years ago, I solved that problem. Check this out. In order to make this operation much easier to accomplish, getting this spare tire up and down, I installed a pneumatic actuator under the frame with a length of aircraft cable attached to the ram or piston, which attaches to the wheel by means of spring-loaded clips. The spare is kept in place at all times with that safety chain you see there in case of a loss of air pressure. Otherwise, it would drop down onto the highway with rather disastrous consequences. Therefore, the chain must be removed before the tire can be lowered. The next step is to close the air supply valve to the actuator that is holding the spare tire in place. That's this valve here. So we have to close the air supply, which comes from this accumulator right here next to it. We close that, and now we can open this air supply and the tire will drop down. Okay, so now the main air supply valve is closed. I'm now going to open the vent valve and the tire will drop down. Just like that. How slick is that, right? And if you want to put it back up, you simply close the vent valve, open the air supply valve, and back it goes. 150 pounds of truck tire. Right up. Now we'll close the supply valve and bring it back down again. How's that? What could be easier? So, once the tire is down, it's a very simple matter to just drag it out from under the vehicle and then detach those 3 spring clips from the lug holes and then pull her out and do with whatever you want to do. When you're done, you simply lay it back down there and attach those 3 clips, putting them on, say, the flat tire or the one that you're removing and changing out, and then leaving it just laying right there where it's handy. You go down and close the valves and drag it back up. It's so easy. You close the vent valve and slowly open the pressure actuator valve and allowing it to go slowly so it doesn't swing too wildly. You just let her go. That's it. What could be easier than that? Okay, folks, that's all I got. I sure hope you enjoyed it. I did.